Wall Street veteran Bernard Madoff has been arrested and charged with running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme.
Congress wants to know what caused the Enron meltdown.
Now, while the collective rage currently is focused on WorldCom,
Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski was convicted of looting hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is one of the biggest fraud cases ever.
Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Find out more on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
Ireland, home to the cliffs of Moher, beautiful seas, beer, and potatoes. A place that many white Americans claim that their ancestors are from and proudly boast about their heritage, although they've never stepped foot there and also haven't taken a 23andMe test to know if their ancestors were from there in the first place. Ireland, the strong nation that fought its way to independence from England, much like us.
And half the
Ireland.
world, but yeah.
Huh?
I said in half of the world.
And half of the world. Ireland, a place of beauty, resilience, and financial fraud. Much like any country, Ireland has had its shares of ups and downs when it comes to the financial sector. Today, we are going to look at Sean FitzPatrick, the Anglo Irish Bank, and the 2008 bank collapse in Ireland. Find out about it on this week's episode and season 21 premiere of White Collars, Red Hands.
You know, my great-grandpa was actually Irish, so I'm a little Irish myself. That's not true. I don't think that's true. Don't hit me, please.
I'll never hit you. I'll just hit you with this knowledge. All right. Well, on that note, welcome back to season 21 of White Collars, Red Hands.
I'm Kashan.
And I'm Nina. Thank you for coming back. It's another season. We are so excited to be doing this for you guys. This is our first episode. Yeah. I don't know what else I wanted to say.
Sorry, everybody. We take 4 weeks off, and then we... You know how after you take 4 weeks off of doing something, you forget everything about doing it? That's what Nine is going through right now. Yeah, so...
Literally right now. I'm like, I don't remember how to talk, actually.
We'll hit a zenith around episode 6. You know, it'll trail off a little bit, and by the next season, it'll be just as bad. Yeah!
Yep. It'll take me 3 weeks to get in the swing of things, and then it'll be over, so...
I'm joking. We have a lot of really interesting stuff coming up this season. We have, not to spoil it, but we're going to be revisiting one of our highest, our most listened to episodes that has deserved a revisit for a long time. We've been doing this for 5 years at this point.
Damn.
And we have at least one episode that's always stuck out of my mind that I've always wanted to go back and redo. Now that we have better equipment and we're better at doing this, so we're going to be doing that this season. So stick around.
Yes. Very excited. But let's dive into today's episode. So, first, I'm going to start talking about Sean FitzPatrick. Who is this guy? Well, what we know of FitzPatrick was that he was born in County Wicklow, Ireland. His father was a farmer, and his mother stayed at home to raise the kids. Before that, she was a civil servant. Don't know what they meant by that. They just said she was a civil servant. FitzPatrick went to university and studied commerce. In 1969, he joined Reynolds, McCarran, and O'Connor, which was an accounting practice. 1974, big year for Sean FitzPatrick, all right? He married his wife, and he joined the Irish Bank of Commerce. And by 1980, the Irish Bank of Commerce merged with the City of Dublin Bank. And then, after that merge, they acquired the Anglo Irish Bank.
Yay, centralize the banks. Make the banks bigger. That's what we want.
Yup, make them as big as possible. In 1986, Sean FitzPatrick became the chief executive of Dublin Bank, which at the time was just a small commercial lender. And then he held this position until 2005 when he was appointed bank chairman. Now, during this time, I'll say it. When he became chairman of Anglo Irish, David Drum became the new chief executive. Now, I was saying Anglo Irish. I was saying City of Dublin. At some point during all this merging and acquiring, they went ahead and just kept the name Anglo Irish. Okay, so Anglo Irish Bank. It's still one of the biggest banks in Ireland. Okay,
That's the worst one.
Fitzpatrick was.
That's the worst name, in my opinion. The Irish Bank of Commerce sounds way cooler.
I agree, but here we are. Fitzpatrick was instrumental in transforming the Anglo Irish Bank. What started out as a small Dublin-based bank ended up becoming a national competitor to the top banks in Ireland. Anglo Irish Bank became the third largest bank in all of Ireland. Now, Ireland's a fairly small country, so
don't let them hear you say that.
Well,
there's
there
no
were 7
small
million.
countries, just small people. Wait. There's no small parts, just small countries. No. There's no way to say the Irish people are small. You know what? Let's just keep going.
The way Fitzpatrick was able to build the bank into what it became was that he would do this by building close relationships with clients. He would also speed up credit applications, and he also expanded into business lending, which I'm going to get more into, which was something that not the other main banks were not doing at the time. Now, at its peak, Anglo Irish Bank was valued at 13 billion euros. In 2007 alone, it profited 1.2 billion euro. The bank controlled 18% of the Irish lending market and grew its loans by 36% of the annual rate.
Can I ask what might be an insensitive question? I don't actually know. This is in the 80s, so is this in Northern Ireland or
No,
just
this
Ireland? Because it's Ireland and Northern Ireland, right?
Yes, this
Okay.
is not Northern Ireland.
Okay.
This is regular Ireland, just Ireland.
Okay, just wanted to check because I think the backdrop to most of his rise is probably during like some of the worst times in the country, right?
So, bank's doing really good. When they were valued at 13 billion euros, Sean FitzPatrick, his 4.5 million shares were worth almost 80 million euros. So, he was doing very well. The reason the bank was so successful was due to 3 things. First, the bank participated in wholesale funding. Normally, banks depend on customer deposits to make loans and to earn their money so that then they can invest that money, make more money. Yeah, we know how banks work, right? Anglo-Irish funded most of its lending operations by borrowing money on the international financial markets. This allowed Anglo to have much more money at its disposal than if it were just relying on customer deposits. Now, like I said a bit earlier, Anglo used credit expansion to grow their bank. Because it had so much money at their disposal, they were able to lend a lot more money than their competitors. This allowed their customer loans to grow 800% between 2000 to 2008. I'm not really sure if that was a good idea. I don't know why anyone thought it was a good idea. It kind of reminds me of similar financial collapses that happened in the past that we've talked about.
Yeah, this is like, I don't know if we've talked about something exactly like this, but this is like a
Not
fully
exactly.
leveraged bank. Like it's a bank that is propped up on debt. That sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah, it's not, and we're going to get into why it was such a bad idea. The third thing that Anglo-Irish did to increase their success was that they were making most of these loans out to property developers. 70% of the company's lending was to construction and commercial real estate. So at this time, real estate and construction, it was booming in Ireland. So that was another reason why they were doing so well. The model was so successful that other Irish banks began to copy their strategies so that they also could grow their businesses. So everybody's just using this wholesale funding to fund their banks. Now, this model, all fine and dandy until Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, making it much harder to access wholesale funding. This caused Irish banks to then have to borrow 85 billion euro from the European Central Bank by June of 2009. So you went from doing wholesale funding just a year prior, Lehman Brothers collapses, and in that short amount of time, it's probably less than a year, to be honest with you, but let's just say a year, you've borrowed 85 billion euro. That's a lot of money. However, this was kind of the least of their concerns. Much like the United States at that time, property prices had been falling by 2008-ish. They had been falling for about 2 years at this point. And in 2009 alone, the housing prices in Ireland fell 18.5%, which makes me really wish that I could go back in time and buy up property in Ireland, much like I wish I could go back in time and buy property here in America during the financial collapse. But, you know, hindsight is 2020.
We just need another one.
Unfortunately, in 2009, I probably had like $3,000 to my name, and I'm probably exaggerating that. So I wouldn't have been able to.
Weren't you 17? You had $3,000 at 17? That's pretty good.
Like I said, I think I'm exaggerating it.
That's pretty good. I had like $300 in a dream.
So the market was still overvalued. If property prices were to plummet more, many of those who took out loans, especially of those who borrowed at the top of the market, would then be in negative equity, which means that the value of the loan collateral is less than the loan outstanding, which then could lead to borrowers defaulting on their loans. And if this happens, it could lead to bank solvency.
It would actually be like worse for the bank if they defaulted on the loans because the price of the property is now below what's still owed on it. Yes. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was bad. It was real bad.
Because usually the bank's very happy to just take it back. Like, okay, you paid a little bit on it, we'll just take back your house. That's fine. Wow. Insane.
Yeah. And the problem was that this was not just with the Anglo Irish Bank. This became an issue with all the top banks in the country. There were like 6 top banks. Anglo Irish was the one that really messed up the entire thing. But there were 6 banks that were involved in total. But the other issue that occurred was that Ireland, much like America at the time, went into a recession. So the housing market fell, then then there was a recession, which then caused unemployment to spike, which made it even harder for people to repay their loans. And by 2013, the average ratio for non-performing loans, which is a loan that has a late repayment or no repayment being made at all, reached 32%, which then equaled to about 85 billion euros, which was what they had borrowed from the other bank. None of the banks at the time were able to sustain their businesses with this much loss unless the government were to intervene. The Irish government did have to bail out the banks with a 64.1 billion euro rescue package, which over half of that would never be recovered, which how can you recover it when there's this much loss? And much like when the recession hit the United States in 2008, many people just want to know, how could this even happen? You know what I mean? How could we have allowed this to happen? Why did it happen? How could it go this far? And what is similar in both countries is that greed, oversight, and irresponsibility were the main culprits for the collapse of the bank. Wholesale funding, like we had talked about earlier, like Sean said, the entire bank is being basically propped up on debt. Wholesale funding, it made Anglo Irish Bank. It made it all its money in the first place. It ended up becoming its and the other banks that copied this model's downfall. Although it seemed like a steady source of money, no one really thought about what would happen if that money ran out. Which, how could you not think about that?
Makes money
How
now.
could you not be like, what happens if this like goes awry?
People are very short-sighted when they're making money hand over fist.
Well, I guess
They shouldn't
yeah,
be.
we
It's
see-
bad, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess we see that with Ponzi schemes all the time on this podcast where, you know, here's the deal. If it's too good to be true, it probably is, right? Like, you can't be doing that. This ended up leading to Irish banks lending out more money than what was being deposited into the banks. And I think we all knew that would, you know, me and you can tell right now that this isn't going to end well. Another issue with the banks was their dependence on property lending. Between 2003 to 2008, the amount of lending that Ireland's 3 largest banks were giving out to construction and property firms grew almost 5-fold. So they were doing 5 times the amount of property lending than they were in 2002. So that's pretty crazy that much money is being funneled into property and construction.
yeah, I feel like this is the same thing that happened in China, right? It's like you build so many, like you fund all of these building projects, you're putting so much money into it, but usually there's not enough people that can actually move in or use this space dependent on the economy. So it just kind of like sits there and then you don't get paid and yeah, it's not good.
And I think we even see that here in America. It's just like hasn't come forward. Like there's something that's happening in my parents' hometown where like all these farms are being bought up and then they're building all these like housing properties on it, like cul-de-sacs and stuff like that. And I'm like, how are there this many people to live in these spaces? There's not.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? They say we don't the houseless the displaced people's crisis that are living without homes. It's not due to lack of homes. there are homes. It's a financial crisis that these people are kept out because they don't have financial means. There's a bunch of homes sitting completely unused, unopened. But it's, people make more money from renting out their house and just, sitting back and getting checks than they do from selling. So the market is, and Airbnbs and stuff now are kind of ruining the housing economy. Yeah.
Don't get me started about Airbnb. There was also, with them putting this much money into construction and property, there was not much diversity in lending. When Anglo Irish's loan books were investigated, their total loan book was only attributable to 20 large developers. So they were having only about 20 people that they were lending all of this money to, where a large majority of those 20 lenders were property and development. Or property and construction. The banks were extremely concentrated in one area of business, which they didn't seem very concerned with. But we talk about this all the time with investing. When we see people like lose their entire retirement funds, lose their entire bank accounts. I know it's not quite the same thing, but you cannot invest all of your money into one company. Much like I would think with a bank, you should not be lending all of your money to one, what am I trying to say? Like one sector of business.
Yeah.
Or one area of business.
Like you diversify an investment portfolio, banks also should diversify when they're investing. It's a solid principle everywhere.
Yeah. That's why I don't ever get into a relationship. I diversify my affection. Because if I lose one, I still have 4 backup.
Okay, maybe not a great principle everywhere. When I said that, I didn't. Maybe I wasn't. Well, not that general, but yeah,
I think
you'll find love someday for sure.
Guys, we're gonna change this to a dating podcast.
No. Hard no. Oh, and that's what it can be. It can be called Hard No, and it can be a story about Nina's dating history.
They always say no to me. Oh, man. All right, back to Anglo Irish. I don't really. So yeah, they're not diversifying their loans at all. I don't know how they didn't expect this to bite them in the arse, but it did. Get into ass arse. Okay. Anyways, and then the last contribution to their downfall.
No, I'm just laughing at you explaining it. That's way funnier than you attempted to be like, wait, you get it though, right? Yeah, no, I get it, man.
You get the joke? It was funny.
Well, I get the joke.
Was it funny?
I mean, I didn't laugh. No, that should be a...
No.
Anyway.
Anyways, the last contribution to the downfall of the Irish banks was the lending quality. Now, the banks had risk management software, but they weren't using it.
Oh, perfect.
The banks were also going against lending policies and making exceptions so that they could give out more loans. We also saw this when we talked about the Lehman Brothers episode, that they were giving people loans who obviously could not repay them, right? However, the exceptions almost became the norm. At one bank, 45% of the development property loans were given were an exception. So that's almost half of the loans that you're giving out. You're making an exception for these people. You actually know they probably cannot repay this back. It was a real Oprah moment. You get a loan and you get a loan. Everybody gets a $100,000 loan. Probably more than that because they're building properties, but
I'm about to say, it's like, what are they building? A shack?
yeah.
An
Things are
outhouse?
cheaper in Europe. Depending on where you go. Now, Ireland did have a financial regulator in place. His name was Pat Neary, who is described as one of the worst financial regulators that the world has ever seen.
Oh, I hope they gave him a plaque.
He should have gotten one. A mug. World's #1 worst financial regulator.
Yeah, I like the phrasing on that. #1 worst, so you get a little excited when you see the #1. It's like, this guy's good at something. You're like, oh,
He's
well.
not. This man really wasn't doing his job at all, and he let a lot of things get swept under the rug. Under him, regulation was basically non-existent. It is said that at the time, Irish banks were run by a principles-based regulatory framework. So basically, it was just like, you guys know the rules, right? You know the rules, don't break them. That was how they were running the banks. And then they just really were not checked up on. Although this model sounds fun in theory, the chief executive of the FSA put it perfectly. The chief executive of the FSA put it perfectly. Quote, a principles-based approach doesn't work with people who have no principles. Mic drop. I mean, he's right. Or I don't know if it's he or she, but they are right. There were many things that could have been put in place to prevent this from happening, to prevent the collapse from happening. I mean, maybe it would have happened regardless. I think that maybe housing prices would have fallen potentially regardless. There might have been a recession regardless. However, it wouldn't have been to the magnitude that it was if there were some checks and balances in place the entire time. There were a lot of rules and regulations that just fell to the wayside. A big reason for this was the fact that staffing at the regulator was extremely limited. There were only 5 people who were supposed to oversee the 5 largest banks in all of Ireland. So that was like 5 people, like 1 person for each large bank, which doesn't really seem possible when, like, at Anglo Irish's peak, they were worth 13 billion euros. So you've got 1 person who's supposed to check up on everything in there when they're worth that much money. I would think that you would need a lot more people regulating them. I don't know. It doesn't seem like very many people working in an office of that magnitude.
You only need one person if they're the number one worst at doing it, right? So
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. So, like, even if new policies had been put in place, it would have been extremely hard to implement them due to the lack of staffing. With an absolute lack of oversight done by the regulator, it's not a shock that illegal activity was running rampant through the bank. Now, we talked about the downfalls of the entire banking system here in Ireland. I'm not here in Ireland.
You wish, man. I wish too.
I would love to go to Ireland. I would love to go there. It's very green. Beautiful. However, I'm not there. Now, we've talked about the downfalls of the banking system in Ireland, but how was it all uncovered in the first place? So to do that, we're going to have to go back to the Anglo Irish Bank and Sean FitzPatrick. So for once, when the financial regulator was actually doing their job, in January of 2008, they discovered $87 million in loans that they weren't really sure what the loans were for. The loans were being provided to FitzPatrick and then was being transferred back and forth between the Irish Nationwide Building Society. He was getting a loan from the bank. He was giving it to the Irish Nationwide Building Society. And then he was somehow repaying the loan. No one really knew how he was repaying the loan. So this led forth an investigation because there was something fishy about the entire situation. At a later date, it was found that this exact same situation happened again. A large loan was being provided to FitzPatrick in September of 2008. Then it was being repaid by him in October of 2008. But more loans were also found between Anglo Irish Bank and the Irish Nationwide Building Society over the course of 8 years. So basically what was happening was that, like I said, FitzPatrick was taking out loans, most of the time not revealing the entire amount. He would then transfer some of that money to the Irish Nationwide Building Society, and then they would return the money to FitzPatrick at a later date. And then he would repay the bank. This led to inaccuracy in Anglo-Irish's loan book. People were shocked to find out that this transfer of funds was not found by the bank's auditor. Drum roll, please. Ernst & Young.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've named them quite a few times.
Yeah, they're always not really checking stuff. And in the end, it was found that FitzPatrick, I saw two different numbers. It was found that FitzPatrick had borrowed, I'm going to tell you, just between 87 million euros and 100 million euros from the Anglo Irish Bank. Honestly, because he wasn't disclosing the amounts, it might have been more. But this was the amount that they found. During this time, it was also discovered, so when the banks were failing, Chief Executive David Drum falsely manipulated the balance sheet to make it appear that Anglo Irish had $7.2 billion that did not exist.
It's a lot of dollars.
It's a lot of dollars. It's a lot of dollars. So he was cooking the books.
That's got to be one of the biggest fudges we've talked about here, accounting-wise. Yeah.
It's a lot of fudge.
Hundreds of millions, sure. Multiple billions of dollars? That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. It's a lot of money. He also had taken out some fishy loans. His were for much less money that I found. His were about 8 million euros, but still millions of dollars worth of loans that the chief executive is taking out. For what reason? Please tell me. When all of this came to light, FitzPatrick stepped down from his position at Anglo Irish Bank on December 18th, 2008. The next day, Chief Executive David Drum also stepped down from his position. On March 16th, 2010, Irish authorities were given a warrant to search FitzPatrick's home. He was arrested on March 18th, 2010, and was held for questioning for 6 hours, even though there was no charge. After being then it kept getting extended. They were allowed to keep extending it to keep questioning him. And after 24 hours, he was released. He was ultimately charged with 16 offenses. So a trial ensued. Obviously, he's going to go to trial, which it is said to be the longest criminal trial in Irish history. FitzPatrick declared not guilty on all of his charges. Shocking. However, during the trial, it was found that although his actions were unethical, the investigation was flawed. And due to that, the judge acquitted him of all charges.
I was going to say those like loans to himself that were unreported is like classic fraud. But I guess there were problems with the investigation.
Yeah, no, it was 100% fraud. He was 100% not paying them back correctly. He was 100% abusing his power. He should have gotten in trouble. People were really outraged when this happened. Many said that if this situation had happened in America, he would have been arrested quicker and he would have went to prison. Obviously, I think he absolutely deserved prison time for what he did, but I think people were just, people were just saying that.
I think the biggest one is that in the 2008 financial crisis here in America and the subprime mortgage bubble, no one was arrested to that. And that was going on. So it's like literally this same thing is happening in America, slightly different setup for it, but no one got arrested here. So I don't know why they think, oh, well, if he was in America, the place where no one got arrested for kind of the same economic collapse, he would have got jail time here. No, he wouldn't have. Probably not.
No, he wouldn't have. He absolutely would not have, or it would have been very minimal.
Yeah.
For what he did. However, as the saying goes, karma is a bitch. Along with not being able to pay back his loans, because obviously he took out more loans than were in his bank account, FitzPatrick also had a series of poor business deals that tanked his fortune. He had an oil deal in Africa go bad, a casino project in Asia stalled, and all of his properties lost value during a global recession. All of these combined left FitzPatrick bankrupt in 2010. You know what's crazy though? He had 80 million, he was worth $80 million, at least in those shares of his company. Remember I said his 4.5 million shares were worth 80 million euros? If he had just acted ethically and then not made shitty business deals, he'd have been fine.
Yeah. I mean, the collapse probably would have happened no matter what, but it's a bank, right? Those shares are going to rebound. Yeah. As long as he still gets the option to buy them once he got, cut from the company. But maybe he probably would have.
Well, he would have never gotten cut from the company because...
with the financial crisis going on, he might have. They might have just been like, yeah, we're doing bad. We're going to restructure. That does happen. But either way, I mean, I'm not going to feel bad for someone who had millions of dollars and also committed what seems to be fraud.
Yeah, no, 100%. Due to his unethical practices, this is actually pretty funny. He was disbarred as a chartered accountant in 2019.
It's like years after everything. It's years later.
10 or 11 years later, maybe because he went bankrupt, he was trying to get a job and they were like, no, you can't get a job.
Yeah, you also can't be an accountant now either.
No. Sean FitzPatrick's story ends. He did pass away on November 8th, 2021 after a short illness at 73 years old. So his life was cut short-ish. Although FitzPatrick did not fully get the justice that he deserves, there was some justice found, very little justice found in this case. Chief Executive David Drum, he was found guilty of conspiring to defraud depositors and investors and of falsely accounting after an 87-day trial. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but he only served 2 years and 8 months. What's really funny about his whole situation was that when everything came to light, he left and he came to America and was living in Boston. And then they had to extradite him back to Ireland so that he could go to trial.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I was like, Boston of all places? Well, I guess they have a big Irish population there.
The Celtics.
Yeah. Maybe that was why he went.
Yeah, I'm sure he's a big Larry Bird fan.
I'm sure he's a huge one. Isn't that also, what's that movie? Good Will Hunting. That's in Boston.
Yep.
He was like, I love that movie. Let me go to Boston and live out my dreams.
Matt Damon.
As a genius janitor at a college. He could have. Well, when it comes to financial collapses in 2008, Ireland and America unfortunately had more in common than we would ever want to believe. I guess it goes without saying that greed and entitlement is an international problem. Ireland's banking collapse of 2008 could have been avoided, or at least not as detrimental, if policies and procedures had been put into place and followed accordingly. This episode is yet another example of how if you give someone an inch, they will take a mile. And just like in America, these men who wrecked the country of millions of euros barely served jail time for their ruin. Governments hand out bailouts to those who do not deserve it, while it's the little people like us who suffer. And that is our season 21, episode 1. Thank you so much. I don't know why. That was,
season 21, the 21st season, and the first episode number one episode of season 21.
I'm trying, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed our first episode of this new season. If you want more of this ish, you need to check us out on social media. You can find us at facebook.com/whitecollarsredhands. You can find us on Twitter at whitecollarspod. You can find us on Instagram at whitecollars_redhands. You can find us on TikTok at whitecollarsredhands. We're also on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces while we are doing the episode. Because Sean's got a new light. He looks really good. Don't tell his girlfriend I said that. What else? If you want another way to support us, you can do so by writing a review. We love a 5-star review. You can do that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also watch us on Spotify as well. The other free way to support us is by word of mouth. If you're like, oh my God. So you hear somebody be like, oh my God, I don't know what podcast. I like my podcast. They're on a break. What should I do? You should be like, oh my God, White Collars, Red Hands. They have a catalog, okay? A big old catalog of episodes, and you can listen to it.
It's true.
And then, what?
I just said that's true. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. And then an unfree way to support us, you can go over to our website, whitecollarsredhands.com. You can click on the merch tab. It'll take you over to where our merch can be purchased. And you can buy yourself or someone you love something for the holidays. Hanukkah's coming up. So is Christmas. So is Kwanzaa.
So is Saturnalia.
What?
Saturnalia. I think so.
That too. The winter solstice.
Yeah, Saturnalia. It's a pagan festival. Anyway.
Yeah. All of those you can buy presents for and give someone you love a White Collars Red Hands merch. All right. If you hear of an episode and you're like, oh my God, Nina and Kashan should cover that, send it our way. We'll try to do a fan-submitted episode every single season. You can submit those by either DMing us on our socials or by emailing us at whitecollarsredhands@gmail.com. And now I think I got it all.
I think you did.
I did. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on another episode of White Collars
Red Hands.